Hello, sweet friends, and welcome to The Way Through. I'm your host, Bonnie Worth, and thank you for being here. Truly grateful that we get to tune into each other each and every week. And I mean that because the energy is something that is real, and we are connected in oneness and purpose. And that's what keeps bringing me back every week to the show. And I thank you for being here because I know that's what calls you forward to be here too. And I just really appreciate the chance to dive into conversations and do whatever I can to help and support you through whatever may be coming up on your path to becoming and wholeness and happiness in your life. I was just having a conversation recently, and it just, in fact, just a few minutes ago, where it really is, we can't save the world, but we can certainly look at how we're navigating the world ourselves, what we can take care of, loving those that we get to love in this lifetime, being present with the things that are possible for us to begin to shift or move through, and you're really paying attention, to being who we are, in knowing that in some way our compassion, our love, our light is making a meaningful difference in the world around us. We can't fix the world, but we can certainly take care of what is ours and what we are contributing to it. That brings us into today's conversation. This is really, this illusion that we carry, that in some way we are broken. This is a big deal when we consider our healing journeys. This is an ingrained narrative, a belief that at at this that feels like a core truth, but it is a self-perception based on conditioning that's influencing what we believe is possible for ourselves. This is the product of intergenerational patterning. This is about it's less about a reflection of reality and more about what is passed down through generations, through our society, of what sits in, we could say, an entangled scope of our human condition. It's the subconscious messages, the beliefs, the paradigms that are interwoven in terms of how we witness ourselves in the world, or how we even witness ourselves in the mirror. There is just this undercurrent that sits in what is an internal environment that has led us to believe that, from the capacity of who we are, with all of our failures, our imperfections, this deep grained scope of unworthiness, that we have convinced ourselves, or have been convinced, that our shortcomings, the bad things that happen to us, the impact that these experiences have had on our psyche, on our mental, emotional, spiritual well-being, physical well-being, are something that says that we need to fix ourselves, that we are broken. And I'm saying this not in terms of a me in judgment of humanity, or me in judge of, you, or me, even because we have an ego. It's just saying, in the sense that this is where I was. This is something that I believed. I remember, as I was preparing for the show, I was thinking about many years ago when I was at my crux, when things were at a point of absolute, what felt like the hopelessness and the despair, and just feeling like life as I knew it needed to end. Either I was ending my life, or I was praying to my higher power to take me from this life. And at that point, there was this, in that scope of despair, I believed I was broken, that what had happened to me, and the damage of what maybe have felt like my suffering spirit, was indeed that it was broken and irreparable. It was irreparable damage that I believed could never ever be any different. I was convinced of this. I was convinced because of what the conditioned responses and the external circumstances, in the naivety of understanding my role in creation of my life, where this was this paradoxal, this familiar pain and suffering, um, and and not even realizing in the paradox that it was a part of what was an identity of who I believed I was and not who I truly am. There's a complete difference. So when we look at the identity of self, we know and understand there are four different levels of identity. We have our ego identity, the wounded, the suffering, the one that believes that it's defective and broken. Then there is another scope of our identity, which is the higher self that knows and understands of our divine nature, of this beingness of purpose and of matter beyond form. But this is when we look at this part of this identity of our wounded self. I always refer to it as the little human who, has this understanding of self that is so warped or so convoluted of what is truth, this belief that it's broken, that unconsciously clinging to the suffering, believing that this, life is this predictability because of struggle, and that predictability that just begins to justify those feelings of worthlessness, of failure, of inadequacy. And it really makes it easier in that little human suffering state to accept limitation, to avoid vulnerability, especially the vulnerability that's required in order to really move beyond and into alignment with that greater beingness of who you or who I am in physical form. But we look at this in terms of this human condition, these beliefs that really, in essence, serve a bit of, we could say, as a protective mechanism. No, and bear with me here, but it's about this protection when we are viewing ourselves as damaged. What we're doing or what we believe we're doing in that scope of protection is that we are shielding ourselves from the possibility of being hurt again. We are also shielding ourselves from facing some of the deeper things that we need to face about ourselves, about our, say, responsibility in in what we've created, and what we are a part of. And again, I say we created because of understanding of the influence that our paradigms, our thoughts, our energy, our belief systems, our woundedness have in shaping what we attract and manifest in our lives. What is the silent aspect of prayer that goes out into the universe that brings to us experiences and circumstances that match what's going on inside of our internal landscape. So it's easier for that ego, that low self, that little human identity to hold on to the narrative of brokenness, because facing or moving beyond that is complete unknown territory. Even though, there may be a desire for change, the narrative of that brokenness and the fear of confronting or moving into that unfamiliar can feel very intimidating. It can feel like we are not safe. And again, when we consider safety is something we cling to, especially if you're someone who's experienced trauma, where you've had a lot of difficult or challenging experiences in your life. There's a pain body that is exasperated as soon as fear comes into play. There's a triggering that goes on within the emotional body that says we are not safe. I am not safe. I can't do this. Better stay to what's known. Better hang on to what I've been able to create in a scope of safety, even if it's limited in what we've been able to establish or create for ourselves. We hang on to it. The ego clings to what is familiar, even what is a false sense of safety. When we look at, this is when we're moving into the unfamiliar, the little human begins to really get agitated, and this idea of moving beyond what has been known also acts like this deficit that gets in the way of growth and keeps us stuck in what are the familiar aspects of suffering rather than moving into an experience of joy, of uplifting, energy and feeling more vital and whole and happy in our lives, more at peace in our lives. I mean, it's what we pray for, except the little human believing in its own state of brokenness clings to the suffering out of that fear-based consciousness that is running in the underbelly. It's not even happening at a state of awareness, not always, not until we begin waking up to more of a to that greater truth of who we are, more understanding of who we are at the core, that beingness that exists inside of us. But while we're in that broken state and our little human and the inherited conditioning really become a self-fulfilling prophecy. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy perpetuated by that comfort of familiarity, that unconscious desire. It's an unconscious desire to avoid discomfort, to avoid the discomfort of change that we'd have to move towards when we really wanted to move into a place of deeper self-exploration, self-realization, and really ultimately healing the layers of the conditioning. And I don't know if we can even say healing. It's about shifting through and separating out everything we've believed ourselves to be based on the identity of the low self, of that wounded state of who we are within that human condition. So here, this is also staying in that state, clinging to it in the familiarity is also what continues and really gives almost like this permission card to continually externalize the blame of circumstance, the blame of these bad things. I'm blaming other people for the state of my life, for how I feel. I blame other people for what's happened. We do that at the low ego wounded state, at that identity level. And we begin to justify our feelings. We justify the bitterness, the rage, we justify, and I want to say, please don't get me wrong, those feelings are valid. Those are valid in terms of what we've lived through, the things that have happened to us, but they are also keeping us in limitation. And so here again, the justification is valid, but it also leads to a justification that keeps us stuck, and it keeps us stuck in the suffering because we're confined in the belief that we're broken and it's irreversible. What has happened to us, these bad things, nothing can be fixed, nothing can change. I'm doomed, and I'm going to live like this forever. This is just the state of my life, right? But it's also where we look at justifying what is the inadequacy, justifying, as I said, that brokenness, but more from this inherently defective place inside of us. And again, this need for really these certain struggles, it creates setbacks that become inevitable. And again, we believe that the situation, our life, even our own self is unchangeable at that low identity state. So this is a belief that persists, and it's reinforced. It's reinforced through our family dynamics, through the internalized shame that we're carrying. It's the self-perpetuated cycles of doubt and self-criticism. All of that is a part of this cycle. It's what keeps us blocked and stuck and limited in what we can experience. Now, here again, when we look at what's been inherited, the inherited belief systems, the inherited pain and trauma, what we've taken on, whether that be from previous generations, whether that be from our personal experiences in this lifetime, or what we've carried over from previous lifetimes, all of it just reinforces that sense of brokenness. These emotional scars are what distort our self-image. These belief systems convince us that we are irreparably damaged. This is where it comes from. And so this narrative, especially within the unconscious, that says that and believes that I am broken, I am broken, I am broken, I am damaged, nothing is ever going to change in my life, because it sits there within this belief in the unconscious. We begin to sabotage opportunities that would otherwise allow for our growth, allow for our healing, allow for our prayers to manifest and come into form in reality. And so it's just this way that the ego identity continues to validate the original belief. So here, when we look at it, and I love that you're here with me every week. I love that we get to have these conversations, because you are someone like me who is recognizing that those beliefs, especially the belief of being broken, is an illusion. That is an inherited story. It's not an absolute truth. And part of this journey, when we can think of this healing journey, is really where we begin to, these aha moments that begin to take place. It's like the higher self begins to talk to the wounded little human, these moments that go, hang on a second. What if this isn't true? What if there's more to me? No, it's not. Then the ego says, no, it's not. There's these bad things happen. Life isn't going to continue this way. Nothing's ever going to change. You are broken. Nobody loves you. You don't matter. Yada, yada, yada. Right? The higher self comes in and says, no, you are worthy. You do deserve to be respected and loved, and you're worthy of that. And then the ego shuts it down, right? Because it's so conditioned to the narrative. But here, when we begin challenging those conditions, challenging the narrative, just as the higher self begins to do, as we start to awaken that, there may be more to me than what I've understand, that where we reach that point where we say, I can't do this anymore, that place of absolute, what I call this holy absolute state of surrender, where we hand over our lives to the higher power. I mean, that was the state, that was for me, that was the exact state, or the pivot point in my life, when I reached that absolute state of that surrender. And so that's where, again, I began to challenge, and I began to look, and this is where awareness started to come about, where the higher self started to, that voice from within, that voice of the higher self started to challenge what I believed. Is that true? That's not true. Well, and what is my truth? Even it's the higher self that stops us to go, what is my truth? What do I really believe in? This is again where the higher self helps us to begin to acknowledge the origin of the beliefs, and to help us understand that in the conditioned aspect of it, that there's a falsehood here. There's a falsehood, and then we begin to challenge it as a way to dismantle what we've inherited, what we're carrying, what we've believed to be true about us, that wasn't ever ours to carry in the first place. It was just part of what we were born into based, again, on our family dynamic, what we were born into based on the human condition. That's ultimately what it comes down to. So from the perspective of the ego and those wounded parts in ourselves, there is that relentless narrative that insists that we are broken and we need to be fixed. An inner voice at the lowest scope of us, that was born from wound, that was born from inherited conditioning, that has convinced us that our worthiness depends on how we heal, how we mend, how we repair ourselves. And what happens in that state, and I was there, always constantly looking to what needed to be healed, what needed to be fixed, because I believed I was broken, that there was something that needed to change about me, that something I wasn't, it was like the not good enough paradigm had convinced me that anything I was doing was not good enough, which meant I was on this perpetual cycle of seeking to improve, always striving to reach some new ideal, a new version of myself based on the wounded identity. This perpetual cycle. And I know a lot of my clients that come to work with me and have been doing a lot of self-improvement work over the years. It's really what happens. It's like, I need to improve myself. I improve myself. It's like, I buy more books on self-improvement. I've got it. What's the latest trend? How do I fix this? What is the answer? You see, the ego, this relentless force, keeps us. It kept me. It's keeping you. It keeps others. Into being broken in this constant striving. A voice that whispers that the only way to have peace is to fix what's broken, whether that be our past, the traumas, these shortcomings, these internal deficiencies. And it's an exhausting cycle. And we devote so much time and energy to repairing, to improving, that we actually end up hiding parts of ourselves that not only we've been convinced that we believe are fundamentally flawed, but we begin to hide deeper truths about ourselves as well. So the story feeds the ego. It says we're incomplete, broken pieces need to be mended. It's an never ending cycle of perfection, of success, of looking for validation, and believing that there will be some sense of fulfillment on the horizon once we eradicate all of the imperfections, once we get over all of these flaws, once we fix and we heal. And so it's so interesting because the ego, remember, the ego is in the state of saying, I want change. I don't want to live like this anymore. I've been praying for more. This is, it's just so caught up in the pattern, but we become hooked to the dissatisfaction. It's like we become addicted to our own suffering, and we continue to push away, the very things that, and I say the very things being the state of being, the understanding of ourself from a higher perspective, the deeper truths that we shove away because we want to shove those truths away until we fix what is flawed or deficient before, and then we can get to the truth. We deny our truth. I look at this even in terms of my own mediumistic abilities. It's like, even as I started in my healing, I completely was separated from who I truly was because I was in complete denial and suppressing of my natural ability to communicate with the unseen world. This part of me that is me. It's a part of my personality. And so I was still looking at it as being something that needed to be managed, that it was something that I couldn't admit or bring forward in truth. So that was really what continued to create that sense of brokenness and deepen the feelings of separation, and really keeping me away from what was this true sense of well-being in my life. And the ego, at that little identity, it's dynamic. It is dynamic in helping us to believe that something is missing, that we must earn love and acceptance by fixing ourselves, that we need to convince other people that that we're a good person. We try to convince other people that we can help and that we're lovable. We go out of the way to do that, but all it does is really confirm that we continue in the belief that we're flawed, and that's what's defined us. That is diminished what is our true value, and we've allowed for the imperfections to be at the forefront, which means that we need to, like I said, we're proving our worth. We're reinforcing the belief systems that says that our love needs to be earned, right? All of that. And so it's this constant cycle of self-repair, of striving, and really, it becomes exhausting. And it's this we strive for more, to do more, to do more. We take another class, we take another certification, we enroll in other maybe groups that can help us to fix what's broken inside of us. But here's the truth from that ego narrative, the little human that is pursuing it on this pursuit of this elusive sense of wholeness, this fixing state, is creating the division. There is a division between the true self, the divine self, There's a division between the ego and the higher self, and it continuously feeds the illusion that what needs to be achieved in our life is done so through the external, through the future, through working towards something. Our healing journey is almost like saying we are constantly journeying towards healing instead of proclaiming, I am healed. Instead of activating inside of us that there's nothing wrong, that peace is in this presence, peace is in the now. But we have to move out of, and again, this fundamental aspect of lack consciousness that reinforces the cycle of the dissatisfaction. We need to move out of the identity that has the narrative so ingrained, those stories so ingrained that it's a part of us, and we continue to pass it down. We continue to pass it down through generations to follow. So this is, the ultimate, and like, when does the cycle stop? When does the cycle stop? Whether the cycles of abuse, the cycles of trauma, the cycles of shame, the cycles of unworthiness, the cycles, I can go on and on and on. When does that stop? Well, it stops by our ability to recognize that that narrative of being broken is wrong. We're not broken. This brokenness has only come from the fear of vulnerability. It is the fear of authenticity. Because if we admitted our imperfections, we expose ourselves. We expose ourselves to being judged, to be rejected, to having people not like us. But it's what perpetuates the disconnect from our true self. It's a barrier of genuine connection, even with other people. Not just in terms of our own self or our inner truth, but a genuine connection with others. Because we're too afraid to show the parts of ourselves that we believe are unworthy or defective. So this is where, again, we need to choose, here again, where to stop the cycle, to look at interrupting what are life's events, interrupting the storyline to say, whoa, 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 that's actually not true, because there is another identity of me, an identity of the ego, of the little human, and the identity of the divine, the one that is holy, the one that is here inside of me, the one that is inside of you, the one that has brought us all into form. There's a higher aspect of self, an angel inside. I always say the little human and our angel. And so when we look at moving from the skewed perception of the human experience and being a part of the wrongness, the judgments, the separation, the shame, the need to isolate, the reinforcing that story of our brokenness, we move into recognizing our intrinsic worthiness, our wholeness, that innate divine nature. But we need to look at, one, shifting the paradigms and belief systems that we're operating in. What have we inherited? We need to begin to unravel the things, what we've been convinced to believe about ourselves, about what's possible for our lives, about what we're worthy and deserving of. We've got to challenge it. We've got to change the operating system, the framework that is really establishing the foundation for our life. And that's what we're looking to fix, is the framework. We're not looking to fix ourselves. We're not broken. The framework, Our operating system is flawed, but we're not flawed. We're not broken. And so when we can recognize that deeper truth, we position ourselves to be more empowered. We position ourselves to say, I am not of this circumstance. I'm not of this circumstance. This is not me. This is what has been what the experience I'm in right now, but it's not me. That's not true. That's not my truth. That's not who I am. It's the framework that needs to be fixed, not us. We're not broken. We're not broken. We never have been. We've only been convinced through our this healing journey, that we have somehow that we need to fix. So when we look at from this, we're really about creating alignment to the higher self. That's really what comes into. So like true alignment is living in what would be connected to the higher self, to the consciousness of choice, the consciousness to choice of stepping back from this illusion and really becoming more deliberate to move through the world out of what has been that wounded survivorhood, to survive our life, to be a survivor. That's the victim that says, I need to survive, and move into this higher state of consciousness, this state of observer, to witness life, ourselves, others from more of a state of compassion, of recognizing that it's through our interconnectedness, it's through each of our divine natures that we begin to understand that these things that happened, every experience, every challenge was vital. It was vital. It was vital to our awakening, to stepping beyond who we believed we were, to know who we are. It's like unmasking, like taking the mask off so that the true essence can guide. And this higher state of purpose, this higher state of being, this part of who we truly are underneath all the layers of conditioning, everything who we've been convinced or believed ourselves to be, from a state of brokenness, to realize, we're not broken. We're not. The framework is broken, and that's what needs to heal. The framework needs to heal. The framework is our belief systems. It's our inherited conditioning. It is all of the paradigms and thoughts and patterns and behaviors that exist because of the wounded self, because of the low self, or the little human in the human condition of that human condition. That's what's broken. We're not. Okay. So we look at, we gain what is, I said, we move into an elevated perspective. And from an elevated perspective, it's where we stop and we begin challenging what the beliefs, challenging what our thinking patterns, challenging what we're saying about ourselves, whether what we're saying about ourselves when we're standing in front of the mirror, what we're saying about ourselves when we're talking in terms of our life, what we say about it was even possible right now for our humanity. Where are we, in the scope of existence when we think about what's possible? Because really, through this connection to who we are, this higher truth, this higher purpose, that it's the I am, all things are possible. All things are possible. And so when we look at it from an elevated perspective, this connection to the higher self, we gain the power, not the power over others, not the power to fix something, but the power to alchemize the bad things, to alchemize the trauma, the wounds that we've accrued in this lifetime, what we've brought forward from previous lifetime. We get to alchemize it, and alchemization is a state of frequency, of vibration and energy that comes in from a higher state of being. So we're literally shifting the vibration. We shift the vibration of the unconscious to make it conscious. And with that, from a higher state, that serves as what is a catalyst for massive transformation in our lives. Massive, massive transformation. If you tuned into the show last week, you're going to remember me talking about how to shift and move from the little human to the higher self. I really dove into the 4 different identities. So if you are tuning in for the very first time today, or you didn't catch last week's episode, I really encourage you to go back and listen to it. It's going to give you a greater understanding of how to move from the place of this low little human, this hurt, scared, living in fear, lack consciousness container, to move to what is this connection to the beingness, the higher self, the I am that is listening to the voice of something greater. Not something, it's like I would say it then I say something greater, I mean here in aspects of the identity of the little human, the angel that exists in what is the intentional self, the higher self, the one that decrees and declares and has desires and knows no limitation, that one who listens to what is the soul that is expressing in so many different facets of life and existence, and the soul who listens to that which is the universal source, that which is the unconditional love, that which is from where we all are a part of, that oneness. There's no separation. But our work, so to speak, the work in terms of fixing, as I said, is the framework, but our work is also involves moving ourselves both consciously, energetically, into connection, into a higher state of being inside of us, where again, as we begin to, you know, approach our wounds with consciousness, with compassion. We begin to unravel the layers of what's been conditioned, the patterns of separation and limitation, and we begin to alchemize it. We transmute the pain. We transmute the pain into wisdom. We transmute the scars into strength. We transmute this bad thing that has happened to us, that really was the central piece of our awakening. We're able to take that and transmute it into purpose. Purpose in helping others, purpose in manifesting greater joy in our life, for purpose for peace, purpose for all that we've been, whether you're looking to work directly and help other people, we understand that we're transmuting it into purpose, which means it had meaning. It has greater meaning. It has higher purpose. It's when we do the inner work, we clear the space for that divine understanding of self, for the energy, for transmutation to flow through us. And when we're consciously engaging in the process, when we're constantly engaging to say, I'm declaring I am in a full and complete alignment with my higher self in this moment, when we are taking action, that is a conscious choice. And the more we're doing it, the more that we raise our vibration, the more that we begin to feel centered and grounded and experience joy, and we find more flow and ease because we're living in a higher state of peaceful interaction, peaceful connection, peaceful existence. And that's our attraction factor. That's what the universe responds to. And what is good increases exponentially. It's unbelievable what we can attract. We become such potent manifestors. We experience greater levels of abundance. Our relationships begin to reflect the true nature. They become a reflection of who we are, not who we believed ourselves to be. And so the universe responds in this heightened vibration with the clear intent. And it allows for the process of, we could say, of creation, the process of manifestation to really become effortless. It begins, it's like we're living in harmony with our truth. We're no longer subjecting ourselves to a broken state of being, because that's not true. The framework is broken, but we're not broken, because at our highest level, we are whole, we are complete, we are living in harmony, we are worthy, we are love, we are all those great, those beautiful things. We are grace, we are compassion, we are humility, the I am that I am. And so we're able to so quickly go beyond this, the state of the ego, the story of brokenness that has been creating more of the same, because we've been so convinced that when we wake up to the through and wake up from the illusion, when we wake up from what has been distracting us from the truth, when we wake up from here, this becomes this, I want to say, this state of existence, this state of experience of life, where every twist and turn, every pivot we make, every challenge that comes up are invitations that are supporting us to journey home to ourselves. It- to journey home to ourselves. That's what a healing journey is all about. The healing journey is not about fixing, repairing. It is coming, really coming into a space, into a state where, through our own grounded recognition of our eternalness, our beingness, the love that is you, that is me, that is a part of the same universe that we exist in, that we are from in this place whole. We have imperfection that we can see as beauty, as in humor, as we can don't need to defend, and we're not insulted by it, but we just can just lovingly say, yeah, that's me. I have shadow and light. I've got, times when I am absolutely in the pureness of joy, and times when, I falter. And that's okay. But it's about being able to consciously pivot, not just in our mind, to pivot into positive thinking, but to pivot from, in those moments, from being in the identity of our little human to pivoting to being in connection with the higher self. And from that state of higher self, from that true essence, what we can shift and change and alter and declare and bring into form becomes unimaginable for that little human. But when you start to experience it, when you start to live it, when you start to flow with that, it becomes joy. Life becomes a life that you can love. You love yourself. I think this is really the biggest factor of it. You have to love yourself so much that you are no longer willing to continue under the narrative of the conditioning, that you love yourself so much that you begin to challenge what you really believe. You begin to challenge what is true, right, and best for you. You begin to challenge what you've inherited, what you're carrying, what you've believed is possible for you, and you allow for, the moment you begin to challenge, you allow for the voice of your angel to begin to speak to you. The voice of the angel that reminds you of who you truly are, of what you're capable of doing. And from the voice of the angel and that connection to what is divine and true and right about you, you begin to heal and shift through and release all that has been unserving, all the narratives, all the storylines, all of the ways in which life has convinced you that you were anything less than worthy, anything less than true, pure potential itself. So, sweet friends, I hope that something that I shared with you in this episode has really helped you to reflect on yourself, to look at you in the mirror, to begin to understand yourself at a level beyond what your ego has convinced you to believe. You're not broken. The framework is. The framework requires some attention, but you, who you are at the core, is perfect. Flawed, with imperfection, human, and never a day without being truly worthy of all that you've been praying for, all that you are worthy of. So I really hope, as I said, that something I've said has really sparked you to have a new understanding of who you are, to begin to look at your life and who you are, and what you've been navigating from a place of greater compassion and understanding. And more importantly, if there's something that I've shared in this episode that someone you love, that you feel could really benefit from hearing this message, I ask that you please share this episode. I invite you to subscribe across all platforms and be a part of the weekly conversations, and to invite those you love to be a part of them too. Thank you so much for tuning in. And remember, sweet friends, irregardless, when you are in connection with your higher self, there is indeed always a way through. Until next